It's hard to overstate the damage that Shrek the Third did to Shrek as a franchise. The marketing was so obnoxious, so ubiquitous, and so overpowering that the film was a joke before it hit theaters. That immense capitalist fetishism, coupled with the actual movie's lackluster storytelling, especially as compared to the prequels, and helped to ensure our green pal was never quite the same again. And make no mistake, the first two films were really good. They were thoughtful deconstructions of traditional storytelling tropes in pursuit of creating a true modern fable that was no less heartfelt than those it parodied. Shrek the Third, by comparison, is not only drowning in miserable money grubbery, but it's half as heartfelt and also packed with inconsequential gags that pad out runtime. But I still really like it anyway. So let's spend some time discussing its positives and negatives. And thank you so much to my active patrons, real quick. Without Patreon, I definitely couldn't afford to keep making videos like this. Alright, on with the program. Shrek is a largely character-driven affair, which seeks to demonstrate depth in people we wouldn't expect in ways we wouldn't expect. That's kind of its whole thing. Shrek isn't just a grumbly monster, he's as complex and multifaceted as any of us, and he only lashes out in anger to push back an uncaring, judgmental world that refuses to see his inner beauty. Through both of the first two films, every scene is dedicated, in some capacity, to teaching us more about our protagonists. Shrek, his lovably obnoxious pal Donkey, and his wife Fiona are the emotional anchors. They're everyday, struggling, strange folk who just want to live a life of happiness without worrying about what the state or its socio-political masterminds have in store. But that's a bit complicated in Shrek 2, where Shrek has to contend with high society and he finds out, hey, some of high society is full of weirdos pretending to be normal, just like him. And the real villains are the individuals who encourage us to change ourselves for their benefit. All really good stuff. But throughout all this, Shrek really hasn't had to grow up or contend with much social or interpersonal responsibility. That's where Shrek the Third comes in. Shrek the Third hopes to continue Shrek's character arc by forcing him to take responsibility. Responsibility for what, exactly? Well, for being a prince, and for getting Fiona pregnant. That too. Shrek's father-in-law, Harold, dies early in the film, leaving Shrek as the heir to the throne. He receives news of Fiona's pregnancy shortly thereafter, and he quickly conflates the two in his mind. He doesn't want any of this, he never asked for it, and at first his refusal of the call seems downright childish. But as the story progresses, we learn it's a bit more nuanced than that. Shrek just doesn't think he's good enough. He thinks he's an unsuitable father, an unsuitable king, and that others are fools for depending on him in that way. It's an intense internal struggle. We even get a sequel song to Need Some Sleep from Shrek 2, titled Royal Pain, whose lyrics are no less heartfelt. They detail a Shrek who feels that his honesty and affection aren't enough anymore, now that he's expected to be responsible for more than Fiona and take charge of things external to himself. Seeking to relieve himself of his duties, Shrek travels to find Fiona's long-lost cousin Arthur and force him to take up the king's mantle instead. Along the journey, Shrek comes to act as Artie's surrogate father, and naturally projects many of his own flaws and insecurities onto Artie as a result. All sounds good so far, right? Well, the problem is how little time these two have to develop their relationship. What little we do see is actually quite good, focusing on a dramatic and comical rapport between them that suggests they have a genuine chemistry. Some of the dialogue is downright phenomenal in delivery and design, but it never gets the exploration it deserves. Why might that be? Well, gags and jokes. There are so many gags, and unlike Shrek 1 and 2, where the humor is used to service the characters, it isn't so beneficial in Shrek the Third. I'd say it's downright detrimental. The film regularly takes lengthy breaks from the ongoing storytelling to tell jokes, and all that time adds up. Adds up so much that, say, the filmmakers might wind up cutting out important character development scenes from the narrative, leaving them on the cutting room floor, and owing to the audience's bafflement at why we're supposed to care about Artie in the first place. There was a good arc and good story here for Shrek, but it was absolutely smothered under obtrusive juvenile humor, which obscures the heartfelt themes rather than lifts them. Wasting time on nonsense is really one of the film's largest problems, and it stems from a poor set of priorities. Why include Donkey and Puss in the film at all, when they do nothing to help the heroes or their struggle, and instead just bumble around being cheap fan service? But the film must be more than Shrek, Artie, and company, right? How far do the themes of responsibility and agency stretch? I'm happy to say that they're almost universally applicable. Everyone struggles with or exemplifies responsibility in this film. The princesses of Far, Far Away must learn to take responsibility for their political stations by fighting back against a tyrannical uprising. The villains must learn that the secret to happiness is within their own efforts, and it's no one else's burden to give them their desires. Everyone has to look inside themselves, diagnose their faults, and learn to grow. Everyone except the main antagonist, who may well be the best written character. Prince Charming, still reeling at the recent death of his villainous mother at Shrek's hands, blames the world for his suffering. His mother promised him the whole world, so he feels, naturally, like he's owed the whole world. But that is his beautiful tragedy. You aren't owed your happily ever after. You have to earn it by fighting hard to be the best you that you can be, same as anyone else. But Charming feels entitled to everything, and mistakes his late mother's lofty promises as his birthright. Throughout the film, we see how Charming repeatedly refuses to actually work for his victory, and as such, even he feels it's hollow and fake, like it's all a facade. This is perfectly symbolized by his love of theatrics, which exists to inflate his self-importance and bury the truth of his wicked soul deep, deep underground. He may be the best written and most complex of any Shrek antagonist. He meets a karmically abrupt end when a massive tower, the perfect symbol of his ego, crashes atop him. I think, given all that I've just detailed, no one would be right in saying Shrek the Third is a mindless, senseless, or soulless film. It feels like an earnest attempt to continue Shrek's development, but it nonetheless feels disjointed and corporatized, thanks to its over-reliance on gag humor and misuse of its recurring cast. But there are things to love here, and the film has style and thematic punch to it that should be envied by most modern children's cinema. Hey everyone, you made it. Thanks for watching the whole video. I really was interested in making a Shrek the Third video for a long time, but it's a whole ordeal. You know, you have to revisit it, you have to recontextualize it within the greater franchise, you have to play the video game. Maybe that last part wasn't necessary, but I wanted to do it. And ultimately, I was really glad that I gave it another shot because I found more things to love in it than I ever did as a child. But I can also definitely see how it led to the downturn of the franchise. All that said, it's now time to thank my lovely Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you soon.
Always be yourself, but if you can be a unicorn, always be a unicorn. Always be yourself, but if you can be a unicorn, always be a unicorn.